Hello there, everyone, and welcome once again to our wonderful pod where pop culture meets PR. On this episode, listeners, Ryan Reynolds has once again been in the news because at time of recording, listeners, we have just had the most recent Comic-Con event in San Diego. It happened Saturday just past, and Ryan Reynolds made a surprise appearance. He cosplayed as a grey version of his famed Deadpool character, and this is the latest in a string of publicity stunts, publicity events that Ryan Reynolds has been a part of, has been involved in. And it used to be, and throughout his career, we could argue, very endearing. Ryan Reynolds has endeared himself to the public, but I don't know, is patience within Hollywood and elsewhere perhaps starting to wear a bit thin? Headlines around Ryan Reynolds, Ryan's position right now. Jackie, you saw Ryan Reynolds' appearance at Comic-Con in San Diego. You've obviously been keeping abreast as well of what's been going on with Ryan Reynolds over the last few weeks and months. What were your thoughts on that appearance at Comic-Con recently, and does it speak to a wider kind of public perception of where Ryan Reynolds is right now?
It's such an interesting live case study of communications in action pouring out in front of us right now. And it's delicious for many, many reasons. One of those things, and I'm a massive fan of other podcasters and other podcasts, and I was listening to Daily Dose of Dana with Dana Bowling, and one of the things she said, which really stuck with me, is that she doesn't like Ryan Reynolds because now she has seen him for the person he is. And that will be somebody who's nice to your face, but will badmouth you behind your back. In Ireland, we call that, they have the side, a bit of side. It's like, oh, you look fantastic, so you do. Oh my God, did you see her? She's dressed as, mutton dressed as lamb. So, it's that kind of like two-sidedness that has come to the fore as a result of the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, It Ends With Us saga court case, and where we've seen Ryan Reynolds in full glorious technicolor through his own words, his very long text, his very long emails. And, we've really had a glimpse of him. And now he is back on the road again. He has to start rebuilding. And this is a man who's been around the block a few times in Hollywood. He is a seasoned campaigner. And this is why this is so delicious, because he's obviously chosen a strategy. And I can see the strategy for what it is, but I can also see a chink in his armor and what he has forgotten to do. Or forgotten about since he started off in Hollywood. And we'll come on to that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's really, really interesting because a lot of the headlines, and we're going to kick off with the headlines around Ryan Reynolds, a lot of the headlines over the last few months, we're going to go months in terms of a metric for the first instance, have been his involvement with, terse or otherwise, with the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, Wayfarer legal wrangle. And obviously that came to a conclusion. And then we've since heard from Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively has adopted her own unique strategy. Ryan Reynolds has been intrinsically linked to that. He's not really had his own stuff going on. He's a movie star, of course, and he's connected to projects and things, and they're coming up. But they're no longer coming up, are they? Rubber is meeting the road. We're now about to see Ryan Reynolds in films. And as a result, we're seeing Ryan Reynolds do press, and we're seeing Ryan Reynolds at events like Comic-Con, and he's very much back in the public eye.
That, Lyle. Yeah. You say that we're about to see Ryan Reynolds in films, but what was very significant is that Comic-Con is the place for Marvel to announce everything. And indeed they did, and we'll come on to that later. But this would have been the great chance for them to announce the next Deadpool. And they did not. And the other thing, which is quite interesting, is that Paramount had actually slated 3 films to film for Ryan Reynolds' production company. They'd sort of gone into, I don't know whether they'd contracted to do it, but they've definitely dropped them. One of them was a Area 51 sci-fi film. Another one was Ferris Bueller's spin-off. They've dropped those now. So he's not in that sort of a lovely financial position. Equally, Aviation Gin has been going through some troubles as well. And interestingly, Ryan Reynolds has dropped Aviation Gin from his bio. So this is all very strategic. He's thought about this. He's separated himself from Blake. They're doing a lot of single line PR campaigns, not focused on them together, focused on them apart. They've allowed a few pap pictures to picture them walking through New York. But apart from that, there's not a lot of the lovey-dovey, my husband kind of stuff going on their social feeds. They're taking very separate and distinct lines of publicity.
Do you think from a PR perspective, he truly realised what the ramifications may or may not be as a result of his involvement in such a high-profile legal wrangle? You say it's very strategic. You say it's planned, and I do agree with you. How long has this been in the pipeline? Because there was a time, Ryan Reynolds, everything he touched turned to gold. He was Hollywood's darling. He was the Hollywood sweetheart, boy next door. He was in everything. I mean, that's not me being, thing about it. Like, Ryan Reynolds was quite literally in everything. He was in rom-coms. He was in the MCU. He was in action movies. He bought a football club. He had a gin, all this sort of stuff. And slowly but surely, you sort of talk about chinks in the armor. Strands of the web are starting to fall away. The raindrops are sort of breaking the tensile strength of these webs. I mean, do you think he fully realized and fully took into account just how much this would have an impact? And what have you made of his PR response since then? Because you say he's removed certain things from his bio. He's doing so. He's separated himself ever so slightly from Blake Lively. It's very, very deliberate, isn't it? It's very, very strategic. It's very interesting to watch from a case study perspective.
I do like that phrase, tensile strength from the webs. That's kind of cool. I like that. So we'll have to write that down somewhere. We need to create a little quote book for this podcast because the lines keep on coming. But yes, do I think that he thought that this was all going to happen? I certainly don't think at the time he was writing all his dum-dum juice emails and stuff like that he thought that these were going to become public. But he has the kind of self-confidence, and some might say hubris, that would carry him through the public scrutiny and ill feeling that he generated as a result of those emails and texts. So I don't think he felt it as anything that would damage him, because I think he has monumental self-belief and self-confidence. And he knows he has monumental power, which was what led to him writing those things in the tone that he wrote them in. He definitely holds himself above a lot of the execs that you saw him writing those emails and texts to. And you remember that phrase, "Oh, how the mighty have fallen"? He is still pretty much up there, but he's gone past the zenith, I feel, and he's starting to decline a little bit. And his job with his publicity, and this is what he's addressing, is to move that notch back up again a bit and to get rid of all the dirty headlines and the negative press by doing what I've referred to as headline PR in the past on this podcast. There are lots of celebrities that do this, lots of publicists that do this. They race to create content at pace to make sure that the last search that you do on Ryan Reynolds will turn up an appearance at Comic-Con, or will turn up an appearance at Fan Addicts, which was another event he went to. He's getting busy with his content, and that is part of the strategy.
And it's headline PR, but it's headline PR that doesn't involve his very, very high profile other half, isn't it? And this is very, very interesting. As I've said already on this episode, the headlines for a long, long time were Blake Lively steps out with husband Ryan Reynolds after latest legal wrangle development, blah, 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 blah. The impact that she's had and his decision to conduct a strategy, single line, you said, I think was the phrase you used, single line PR strategy, where it's just him out on his own, promoting the films, promoting projects, promoting himself. Are we starting to see, based on his strategy, that he's realizing, even though he loves Blake Lively very, very much, he loves his wife very much, I'm sure he does, he's realizing the impact she had and she continues to have on his reputation, on his brand, and he's made a very deliberate move away, hasn't he? Are we seeing that in action over the last few weeks and months?
100%. There is no coincidence in the fact that she turned up at the Met Gala single. They've done that appearance before together. That was the start of their rehabilitation campaign for the both of them, but I think they've both agreed to do it separately. And that's a very good strategy because he's broken away from the negative reminders and connotations that Blake brings. So he now needs to use all the tools in his toolbox, all the channels at his disposal to start putting around the kind of headlines that he wants. Now, you remember I said to you that Marvel hasn't announced a Deadpool 4. And it was a very interesting choice that he made to wander around the halls of Comic-Con, taking pictures with fans, ostensibly playing the role of a cosplayer. Nobody knew to start with that it actually was Ryan Reynolds. And he was doing multiple pictures. And then finally there was this awkward little staged scene with him and the cast of the Doomsday film. The trailer had just come out. There was some exclusive content at Comic-Con, and you had Paul Rudd and Robert Downey Jr. and all the directors and the brothers who direct the film. All of the cast are on the stage, sort of looking a bit awkward and shuffling around and not really knowing how to handle this sudden appearance of Deadpool in Hall H, which is iconic because that's the hall where all the big announcements are made. And he just does this little scripted staged appearance of Deadpool turning up and asking for a bit part in the film and getting a little bit of a push down by Robert Downey Jr., who said it's all in the can, have you bumped your head or something? And then you've got Paul Rudd. He was saying, why is Thor crying? Which is referring back to the last Deadpool Wolverine film where they see Thor in the future crying. So he's trying to get all the references back into his own franchise, into his own film. And Paul Rudd, I don't think this was scripted, he's crying because he's a Wrexham supporter, which I thought was really quite clever. And I'm not sure that Ryan Reynolds knew what to do with that, because he said, why Thor's crying, Rudd. So I think that Rudd went off-piste, and it was all just a bit awkward. And you know what that made me think of? It made me think of, we know it's scripted, you can tell. It's all set up. He walks up with a microphone, the whole thing. But it made me think of those desperate times when people used to try to create viral moments and make them viral and make them happen and want people from Comic-Con to start tweeting this all out and putting it up on their feeds and really making this viral. And I don't think it really hit the spot. I just think it was all just a little bit too cringe. And I'm not sure those super fans, those Marvel super fans at Comic-Con want to see Deadpool crying for a bit part. It was a bit incongruous.
Well, it's really interesting you point this out, because actually I watched the clip when it sort of first came live, in and around, like it actually happening at Comic-Con over the weekend. And I've seen it since, obviously, because it's Ryan Reynolds, because it's the cast of Avengers Doomsday, it's probably the biggest box office hit. I know we've had other big films this year, but, the one that's being hyped up quite significantly before its release at the end of the year. It has gone viral, even though I completely agree with you. It was very, very awkward, quite shoehorned in moment. And it got me thinking, like, what gets the best response at events like this? And what gets the best response is big surprise announcements with epic production values, and there's a huge screen behind a director announcing something, or Kevin Feige's up there, who's the head honcho of the MCU, the Marvel universe, and he's up there with big trailers being revealed, and the crowd goes wild. The lights are all brightly lit, they're all on, they're all spotlighted down, it's quite clinical looking, it's very obvious the Avengers Doomsday cast are a united front, it's very exciting, they're all up there, and you've just got a guy in a costume asking some really awkward, slightly unusual, slightly out of place questions. It got me thinking, you've said how the mighty have fallen. Way back when Ryan Reynolds was, his cachet was so high and everything he touched turned to gold, these were moments that would never miss. Ryan Reynolds would never miss. Is it a bit, dare I say, is this a bit provocative? Is it a bit desperate now, Jackie? Are we seeing a little bit of desperation from Ryan Reynolds? Is that a bit harsh, where it's like they're not hitting? So it's moments like this, when it comes to Ryan Reynolds and his strategy and these publicity stunts, they're not guaranteed hits. They're not solid gold. Like, there is a touch of, what are you doing here, man? Like, this is a bit odd. I mean, is he misfiring a bit?
I'll tell you what it is, Lyle. And it's something that we say a lot about, that thin line between making yourself relatable and showing a lot of yourself, and making people feel like you're their pal, and keeping that mystique, that sense of what's he really like, what is that person, where does all this come from, where's all that comic genius come from? There's that thin line. And what happened with all of the revelations through the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni case was that we actually saw that comedy element of Ryan Reynolds being revealed as him being quite smug and enjoying his own, chewing over his own vocabulary and enjoying his dum-dum juice type text. Really, coming up with these awful descriptions of Justin Baldoni, but you could tell he was thinking he was really clever. And a lot of the popularity of Ryan Reynolds actually came from these seemingly off the cuff, kind of very quick, quippy kind of retorts when he's in live audience situations, like on Saturday Night Live. Everybody kind of thought, oh, Ryan Reynolds, funny guy, relatable guy, really great guy. And what we've seen is that mystique being stripped away. And that is a really, really difficult thing to get back. But the interesting thing is here, and this is where that's juxtaposed with the fact that he's ahead of a $3 billion franchise with Deadpool. I always say, follow the money, honey. And at the end of the day, Hollywood is, you see it from Kirsty Flawsome Talk podcast. You see it on Dana Bowling, A Daily Dose of Dana. Hollywood is that kind of place that actually they'll forgive anything if they're going to make billions of dollars out of you. He is still in that position of power, and he knows it. But, and here's the thing, here's the big but. Are we going to start to see, and we won't know this until we get the box office receipts, are we going to start to see people voting with their feet? Are we going to start to see that little trickle of failure start to seep into his successes? So we've seen it already with Paramount dropping his films. If he was really at the peak, they'd be thinking, yeah, these are dead ringers, of course. We'll do these movies. They're going to make us billions. They're not. Paramount don't think they are. Also, with his other business interests, we know that they're not doing very well. Wrexham certainly is not a gift that keeps on giving, to use one of your favorite phrases. That's not necessarily going to be, he can't keep making documentaries about the rise and rise of Wrexham. So, he's at a very, very interesting stage in his career.
You're absolutely, you use that word mystique, which I love. And when we talk about high profile public figures, not just actors and performers and musicians and things, but we've spoken in the past, about, the royals at length and sort of the mystique around the royals over here in the United Kingdom and all over the world. We've spoken about sports people as well. But when it comes to actors, we don't see an awful lot of actors unless they're on a press tour or at events like Comic-Con, promoting a film or promoting big projects like, the MCU cast been promoting at Comic-Con. And Ryan Reynolds had this incredibly unique mystique to rhyme accidentally. He had a very unique mystique in what you say. He was very relatable. You sort of saw him and you didn't. He was the boy next door. You sort of saw him and it was funny and, you're telling, this sounds really reductive, but you're telling your mates about, did you see what Ryan Reynolds, you see that clip on Instagram of Ryan Reynolds sort of quipping back to somebody in the audience of Saturday Night Live. And as a result, he was box office royalty. He was a box office slam dunk. But like you say, now people are perhaps stepping back. He's still an A-lister. So he's still commanding, speculatively, but we can make speculations on this. I'm sure he's still commanding a massive, massive fee. If he's attached to a project, he's commanding a massive fee as an actor. That mystique, you're so right, is slipping away. Do you think, and again, this is a bit of a speculative, I'm so apologetic for this, Jackie, a hypothetical question. Do you think he can handle that slipping away? Do you think he's the type of personality who has it in him to be able to cope with the fact that people aren't big Ryan Reynolds fans anymore? Like his entire career, people have been mega, mega fans of Ryan Reynolds. And now there's a chance that people might vote with their feet and not see his films and not think that his little skits are funny. How do you think he's going to respond to that? Because that's been his whole brand. That's been his whole being for as long as he can remember. And as a result of things that have happened, that's no longer guaranteed, is it? It's no longer the case. How do you think he might respond to that?
Well, nothing is guaranteed in Hollywood, as we've seen with Harvey Weinstein, for example. So I think he has shown himself to be a very short-tempered individual. We've seen it. It's just been out there, and evidence is there for him losing his rag when he's not getting his way, and he won't be happy about any negativity, and he will be demanding of his production company maximum effort, which I think is so appropriately named at the moment, because it will take a maximum effort to set this ship on the right course. I don't think he'll be happy about it. I think he will be chewing people's ears out if he gets negative press for things. So watch this space. But the other thing to keep an eye on as well is Hollywood's little flags, little Easter eggs that Hollywood puts out. And we've seen this more recently demonstrated with Harry and Meghan. And this is when the A-listers move away from the other people who think they're A-listers. So, he has his crowd. He has his Hugh Jackman, which is one of his best friends, who's obviously Wolverine. You have Matt Damon and his wife being as part of his crowd. But here's my little prediction. I think we're going to see the likes of Affleck and Damon moving away from Ryan Reynolds if they haven't already done so. And when you start to see your pals, your cohort, peel away from you, that is a time of great danger, because this is an indication of people's distaste for being associated with a bad smell. People remove themselves very quickly. You see that with George and Amal Clooney. You see that with the top brass in Hollywood. And this is my prediction, that he will start to see those people peeling away. Equally, he has Hugh Jackman by his side, who is not getting great headlines himself for his relationship with Sutton Foster, I think it is. The girl who replaced his much beloved, long-suffering wife, who basically put her career on hold to promote Hugh Jackman, and got a whole load of no thank yous from him when he found a younger, better version, as he proclaimed it. So there's a lot of distaste for Hugh Jackman's very public showing off of his new love. So Ryan is starting to hang with the not so cool crowd, which is very interesting. And finally, he besmirched quite a lot of Sony executives and people like Ari Emanuel. Now, Ari Emanuel's autobiography is coming out soon, which I can't wait to get. And he is the most powerful agent in Hollywood. So there's a lot of the higher forces that will impact and influence what happens with Ryan Reynolds moving forwards. This is why I think there's a couple of chinks in his armour. I said one distinct one, but that is another chink that he's going to have to work furiously in the background to repair.
And it's really interesting you talk about gravitating, these high profile sort of celebrities as they are. I mean, obviously all actors and performers, like, professionals in Hollywood, gravitating away, moving away from a bad smell. And they do tend to sort of then gravitate, if they're employing a certain strategy and a sort of set of tactics, they tend to then gravitate towards a good smell. And as someone who works in the actors industry, albeit not at anywhere near this level of notoriety, I'm only too aware of the fact that there is always a shinier toy. There's always a shinier, nicer looking toy. And there is a shinier toy at the moment. This is my segue. There is a shinier toy, and this shinier toy also happens to be called Ryan. And we're noticing that lots of people are gravitating towards another Ryan, a shinier Ryan, whilst gravitating away to a slightly, sort of dulled and tinged Ryan, if you like. I want to talk to you about, you've used juxtaposition already in this episode, and I love that word. I want to talk to you about the juxtaposition between Ryan Reynolds' appearance at Comic-Con and the shinier new toy, the Ryan Gosling appearance at Comic-Con, where he was announced, for those of you listeners who don't know, he was announced that he would be playing a much beloved Marvel character, Ghost Rider, in the MCU. He's going to have his own film, and it's very, very exciting. It was revealed in a very, very different way. His appearance was very, very different. The whole room went black in Hall H. The thing went up on the big screen, and then there Ryan Gosling was, and he just sort of said very exciting, and then he left. It was quite minimalist, but it was so exciting. It was a real viral moment. His cachet is extremely high at the minute, Ryan Gosling, compared to that of Ryan Reynolds. What do you make of this comparison? What do you make of this difference at the moment? You said, nothing is guaranteed. We've seen that with Ryan Reynolds, but right now it seems like Ryan Gosling is a guaranteed slam dunk. That can't be sitting too well with young Mr. Reynolds, can it? When appearances like his are going down like a bad smell, and Ryan Gosling's there for 30 seconds and everyone's going crazy for it. It can't be going down terribly well with the Reynolds camp, can it?
I think he's always been slightly irritated by the fact that, they look quite similar. A lot of people, including me, get them confused. And I think that has been a source of irritation for him in the past. I think he's even referred to it on press junkets and stuff like that. This was the clearest message we saw from Marvel at Comic-Con. Marvel could have done a similar thing, announcing another Deadpool. They chose not to. This was a very deliberate decision to push to the front, to make the most important announcement, the Ghost Rider new franchise, basically. Now, here's an interesting fact. Ghost Rider is also going to be directed by a chap called Sean Levy, who is one of Ryan's very sort of close collaborators. He's directed, I think he directed Deadpool, Wolverine. So Sean Levy, in fact, Ryan Reynolds used Sean Levy as an example in one of his long phone texts with Justin Baldoni in what I call the seduction stage of their relationship, when he was getting to know Justin and he was saying to him he can see him being like Sean Levy to work with, and that he's lucky to have Blake there, and they both really rate him and they're very excited to work with him. And it was Sean Levy that Ryan Reynolds held up as a great example of a director that worked with him very well. Now, Sean Levy recently has just directed Star Wars with Ryan Gosling. And now we have him directing Ghost Rider with Ryan Gosling. This is what I was just saying to you about these sort of little movements, these little signs, these little flags and Easter eggs we're getting from Hollywood, about the little movements away from Ryan Reynolds, and that he will be very cognizant of. He'll notice these little things very keenly.
And you mentioned earlier, didn't you? Obviously, Ryan Reynolds' production company called Maximum Effort, which is a nod to a line from a Deadpool movie, maximum effort, Deadpool phrase. You mentioned that right now Ryan Reynolds appears to be paddling with maximum effort under the water, trying to increase his reputation, trying to build his brand back together. Ryan Gosling, it just seems effortless at the moment. Again, it's that everything he touches turns to gold. So again, it's that parallel, isn't it? Ryan Reynolds having to work tremendously hard, almost so hard that we can see is working out. Everything that's done on camera, where they're going, okay, bits of it are funny, bits of it are working. Ryan Gosling turns up to anything at the moment, and I'm a bit of a Ryan Gosling fan, I must admit. But Ryan Gosling turns up to anything at the moment, doesn't seemingly have to do an awful lot. He's just very relatable, very sincere, very authentic, very consistent. He turns up and brings the house down. I mean, again, when it comes to strategy, is there anything Ryan Reynolds could currently learn from Ryan Gosling? Or are the two situations markedly different because Ryan Gosling doesn't have this backlog of potential ill will behind him when it comes to the Blake Lively case and things like that? Ryan Gosling has been pretty squeaky clean by all things considered. So do they have to adopt different strategies, do you think?
Ryan Gosling, he's a very interesting. I think the name is the only thing he shares with Ryan Reynolds in terms of uh, them as two individuals. They do look slightly like each other, but that's where the similarities completely end. They couldn't be more poles apart if you tried. Ryan Gosling actively shuns the limelight. He's a very deeply private person, very genuine, very sincere. And here's the interesting thing. And I think it was Judge Judy who said, if you're acting a part, you're telling lies, you have to have a very good memory. You have to, but that takes hard work to remember the presentation of yourself that you are giving. And I think that what we're seeing is Ryan Reynolds on the hamster wheel, running very fast to get nowhere really, but just to maintain where he is. Whereas Ryan Gosling, because he doesn't crave that fame, he doesn't crave that recognition, he just genuinely enjoys what he does and is a great actor and is so, you can tell when he was on stage, so genuinely excited about getting this part and being part of the Marvel universe. You could just tell that this joy was deep within him, and he wasn't being clever, and he wasn't really even trying to promote the Ghost Rider film. He was just being part of this exciting Comic-Con thing. And this is the thing that I talk about with PR. PR is the only practice, it's the only part of marketing where you start to elicit feelings. People might say, yeah, advertising does that, but that's very much a construct. PR is where you build reputation, you build how people feel about something. And when you've got the raw material that Ryan Gosling has, that's just easy pickings. I mean, he just isn't trying to be anything he's not. And that's just a wonderful thing for Marvel. And they will like that. Marvel will not have liked the way that Ryan Reynolds took an iconic character and used it to basically take down somebody publicly outside of things with Nice Pool. That will have not gone down very well with Marvel. And I think that will be something that the executives would have been discussing and would have been talking about when they are looking at number 4 film. Because that, you don't do that. You shouldn't have that much power as an actor to create a character in a movie to essentially take down a real person in real life, and really sort of put all their real characteristics into a comic creation and run that creation down. It was very distasteful, and I think out of all the things that Ryan Reynolds has shown himself to be, that was possibly one of the pettiest, nastiest things he could have done. And he's using a Marvel franchise to do that. And that is dangerous, Ryan Reynolds. You're on mute, Lyle.
Marvel, as we know, run a very tight ship. Obviously, famously, when Ryan Reynolds first developed a Deadpool project, was not part of the MCU, since become part of the MCU as a result of its popularity and negotiations therein, you have to then realize that you're then part of a very, very tight ship. By the way, listeners, a Judge Judy reference. I feel like we are breaking new ground on the podcast. I was delighted at that. A Judge Judy reference.
Might be a little teaser, might be a little Easter egg of my own.
Hey, I love that.
I'm
Hey.
interested on PR combined with true crime, so watch this space.
Oh, beautiful stuff. And I tell you what, we're dropping Easter eggs as well. I'm proud of us. I'm very, very proud of us indeed. As we bring this one to a close, Jackie, you mentioned, you beautifully articulated there the importance of PR, and actually PR being one of the few industries, if not the only industry, connected with this particular sort of landscape that elicits feelings. And it's important to bring the feelings side of things into your strategy. We're going to go back to Ryan Reynolds. It's been a Ryan Reynolds centric episode. Ryan Reynolds PR at the moment. Let's end on that and what he's currently doing. And we had a conversation, didn't we, before we went live on this episode of the podcast. The difference between the PR he is currently getting from what we call the legacy media and a new wave, not that new, obviously, because it's 2026 and it's been going on for a long while, but a relatively new wave relative to legacy media, this content creator space of PR. What have you made of the PR that he's currently executing, and the difference between how those two sets of media are reporting? Because it's been quite stark recently, hasn't it?
This is, I think, the greatest weakness that Ryan Reynolds has, and potentially that any PR company or any publicist has to now start to bear in mind, that the independent content creator, the legacy media, let's start with that. The legacy media have their affiliations. We've seen this with Harry and Meghan, with People and Closer magazines, Variety, and they all this sort of the legacy media. What they do is they create their relationships and they rely on some of their A-listers to feed them stories, and it's all a very symbiotic relationship. But everybody is wise to that now, and everybody talks about People magazine being the mouthpiece of the Sussexes. So you've got the legacy media where the general public are now starting to have a little bit of cynicism about what they read and what they're served up through the legacy media. And that's an existential problem that the legacy media has right now. If you look at independent media, this is almost like the voice of the people. And this is why we do where pop culture meets PR, because you're starting to see this independent media, including ourselves, having the opportunity to discuss and debate what's happening in front of them. And as a result, the independent media and the content creators therein have a very, very long memory. You look at Shauna Kay. I mean, this woman has read every biography of the royals going back through history. She has a monumental knowledge of the history of the royals, and she's an independent commentator. So you're looking at a new wave of media with the independent content creators who have knowledge, have smarts, have opinion based in evidence and fact. What Ryan Reynolds is doing is he's employing old school media techniques. He's running around doing headline PR, looking at all the events, showing up at the events, trying to get these viral moments going. But that's not gonna work anymore. This is the new media is rising, and this is the chink in his armor. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds made was subpoenaing over 100 independent content creators to give up their sources, to reveal all their emails for the court case for It Ends With Us. And Ryan Reynolds will be for a long time in the minds of those like Andy Signor from Popcorn Planet, like Dinah Bowling from, like Zach Peters. All of these very powerful independent commentators will not forget that in a hurry, and they will not tie their allegiance to Ryan Reynolds unless he earns that back, and he'll have to try very hard to do that. I actually can't see that happening. People like Andy Signor know the Hollywood firmament. That's Popcorn Planet, by the way. They know how Hollywood works. So they know that Hollywood will follow the money. But it's the people who vote with their feet. It's the people who will consume Ryan Reynolds movies. It's that will drive Hollywood, but also it will be the influence of the influencers as well. It'll be the A-listers who are moving away. It will be the independent creators who are actually turning people off Ryan Reynolds. And then that juxtaposition with the rise of Ryan Gosling, with Ghost Rider, you might see a few people thinking, oh, I think I prefer Ryan Gosling to Ryan Reynolds. Why don't we just go and watch him for a change?
And it's this new frontier, isn't it? As we do bring this one to a close, it's this new frontier, as you rightly say, you know, the reporting and a narrative you can control on one line of media. But to your point, there are people who have a huge amount of influence, not just, as you say, A-listers who he had previously aligned himself with, who always wanted to hang out with Ryan Reynolds because his cachet was so high, and now maybe might want to hang out with other people, or Ryan Gosling even, who knows. But these content creators who we have name checked and we'll put in the episode notes as well, these content creators who have a huge amount of influence and want to talk about positive things relative to negative things, and you know, and talk about, you know, how great it was to watch Ryan Gosling at Comic-Con, and did you see Ryan Gosling on Saturday Night Live? And it starts to build up, doesn't it? It's really, really interesting. We'll certainly keep adrift of all of these developments as Ryan Reynolds starts to kind of appear ever so slightly more in the public eye and promoting these projects or lack of projects and things like that. What do you think, listeners? We would love to hear your thoughts. We know you're always very, very passionate about every topic we discuss here on Where Pop Culture Meets PR, one way or another, but we have had lots of great engagement in the past on Blake Lively, on Justin Baldoni, on the Wayfair illegal wrangle, and Ryan Reynolds has been a huge part of that, so we would love to know your thoughts. The comments have been fantastic. I know Jackie has particularly enjoyed reading through them and responding, and we will continue to do that. So please do get your comments in wherever it is you get your podcast. That can be on Substack, which is growing all the time, and we're delighted with the engagement on there. So please do subscribe and get involved in the conversation. Our YouTube channel, we are back and we're delighted with how that's growing. Please do subscribe, like our videos, get your comments in on that platform as well, and wherever it is you get your podcasts as well. Thank you so much for joining us on this, the latest episode of our wonderful pod, Where Pop Culture Meets PR. From Jackie and from myself, take care of yourselves. It's bye for now.